Welcome in, everybody, to Sectional semifinal week here, week 11 officially of the high school football season, and fall's here. I guess fall came in like a lion, pretty much. We really had no early fall whatsoever. It was summer to middle of fall. It's rainy, it's cold. Everybody's out trick or treating in the rainish wind. Hopefully, there's no snowflakes out there, but. It is football season. It is football weather, and we got a lot to talk about over the next hour here on the ESPN High School Coaches Show presented by Crumback Chevrolet. We're going to start it off here in just a couple seconds with Dan Vance of OutsideTheHuddle.net as we do each and every week. We'll follow that up with Coach Pete Kempf, DeKalb Barons. They got a big one coming up at undefeated East Noble in Kendallville on Friday. A rematch of an NE8 regular season game. We'll talk to Coach Kempf about that one. Bottom of the hour, Doug Dinan, Carroll Chargers. And speaking of rematches, Carroll came within a point of tying Snyder late in the fourth quarter earlier this season. A blocked PAT was the difference. And we'll talk to Coach Dinan about putting that game behind them, but also learning from that game and what they can take into Friday's matchup with the Panthers at Spuller Stadium. And then we'll wrap it up 6:45 with Coach Josh Gerber of the Norwell Knights. His team with a big game coming up on the road at Concordia, battle of 5-5 teams in the 3A sectional in the area. We'll talk to Coach Gerber about that matchup and how his team's been playing over the last couple weeks. But a lot to talk about over the next hour or so. But we're going to kick it off as we do each and every week here on the ESPN High School Coaches Show with our friend Dan Vance of OutsideTheHuddle.net. Dan, what's going on?
Oh, not much, man. How are you doing?
Oh, we're just doing great here. You know, it's great weather for football, right?
I mean, I guess to play football in, to be on the sidelines and watch, or in the stands, I disagree. I don't really want to sit in the cold and the rain. But
I absolutely agree with you. You're once again counting down the days till basketball, where there's never battling snow or rain or wind of any kind on a basketball court.
That's true. The days are few. Actually, girls basketball kicking off next Monday, so it's basketball season. Yeah.
But hey, still plenty of football to talk about over the next month or thereabouts, heading into the Thanksgiving holiday in the last week of November. We're kind of going deeper, almost completely through the month of November due to Thanksgiving being so late this year. But Dan, before we get into this week's schedule, let's look back really quick. And we broke down each of these sectionals in detail last week, but anything jump out at you in what happened on the field last Friday to open the postseason?
I don't think there was anything spectacular that happened that really jumped out. There was games where we weren't real sure on some how they would go. Eastside Woodland was one we talked a lot about. We knew that Concordia was going to have an interesting matchup on their end. I think probably the biggest upset in the area is to see Bluffton fall to Fairfield, and kudos to the Falcons for getting a big win there and kind of take some intrigue out of a sectional final down in 2A. Kind of makes it look like Lures and Eastside is the de facto championship game this week, but I don't think there was anything that was too surprising anywhere that we saw.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Brent Kunkel on Wednesday, and he said, he's still kind of dealing with that loss for Bluffton last week against Fairfield because it was something that even he didn't see come out. It came out of nowhere, and it really wasn't even close on the field. A 27-7 loss for the Tigers. But Dan, let's start with the sectionals that are kicking off this week. 5A, 6A in the area took the week off last week due to the smaller fields in those classes. Let's look at Sectional 3, and we'll start with the rematch. Carroll at Snyder. Well, Carroll versus Snyder at Spuller Stadium, the exact same locale as we saw these two teams play earlier in the season. And it was a challenging matchup for both teams the first time around. It was in week 2. It was one where we saw Jeffrey Becker come out and play like a primetime quarterback as a sophomore in his first big test with the Chargers. But Snyder answered the bell. They had a huge special teams play late. It seems like it's a recurring thing with the Panthers that they make a big play in special teams. It was the blocked extra point that prevented Carroll from tying it in the fourth quarter. I look back last year when Carroll handled Snyder in the regular season, and we thought when they matched up again in the postseason, could Snyder find anything? And instead they go out and beat Carroll by 19 points last year and drop 49 on them. So Can we look at this game similarly and say, man, Carroll was there in the regular season, but does Snyder change some things to distance themselves from the Chargers, or should we expect another close game on Friday?
I'm torn on that one because I really think that these two teams are pretty evenly matched. I think they're as evenly matched as we saw when they played in Week 2. But at the same time, I do think Snyder is very good, and Coach Kurt Tittman has been very good over the years. When he's gotten rematches to prepare his team for that second go-around better, and they're always stronger in the postseason, and we've seen that time and time again. So I think that on paper they're very close teams. I think on the field they're very close teams, but you throw in the intangibles of what Snyder is able to do in the postseason, and I got this feeling that that Snyder has put some things into the process and that they may be able to win this one a little more handily.
Before Homestead will get that rematch against either Carroll or Snyder, they need to go down to Noblesville and play the Millers. Now, they're 1-8, but you look at the one victory that Noblesville has was over a Franklin Central team that beat Hamilton Southeastern this year, one of the better teams in Class 6A. Noblesville plays all 6A teams except Cathedral, which for all intents and purposes is a 6A program, and they're battle-tested. They're not great. The record's not great, but they also played some really great teams. So what to expect when Homestead goes to Central Indiana on Friday night?
Yeah, I think that obviously we're going to look at Homestead as a heavy favorite there, but you're right. Noblesville has got some good games under their belt and a good win under their belt. They're strong defensively a lot of ways, and that's going to be the interesting matchup here is because Homestead is so strong on offense. And Noblesville's biggest strengths come on the defensive end, so they're going to have to stop the run game, likely seeing Ryan Burton run the ball again for Homestead, and it's going to be a challenge for Noblesville. They have some ability, but I think at this point Homestead is just too strong, and I think Homestead is kind of that team of destiny, at least in this segment of the postseason and the sectional round, and they want to get to that sectional championship game just as bad as they wanted to win the SAC title. And we saw what happened when they put their hearts and their heads into winning an SAC title.
Moving on to Class 5A Sectional 11, you have Northrop and Goshen, a one-win Goshen team. Feel like Northrop will be able to win there. Let's talk Bishop Dwenger and Northside. And this first time around with this game was Week 2 also. And Dwenger kind of struggled out of the gate first game at home at Shields Field, and eventually got it going in the second quarter and into the second half. Northside laid an egg Week 9. Do they have any chance of hanging around with the Saints on Friday?
Well, I think it's interesting because Bishop Dwenger didn't exactly play their best football Week 9 either.
Yeah.
So you have two teams that need to bounce back from struggles in Week 9. Obviously, Dwenger ended up getting the win, and Northside played pretty bad football Week 9. So they had to make a lot of changes. The intangible, we talked about it all year, is the first time these two teams played, there was no Deuce Taylor involved. And what can he do? Because Bishop Dwenger is going to throw everything at Deuce Taylor. They're going to send guys and packages at him all night long. He's very good at getting out of those packages. His receivers are going to have to haul in passes, and it's something Northside struggled with at times this year, is catching the football. I think it's an interesting matchup because if you look at their first meeting, the first half was actually relatively close. It was opening night at Shields Field, and the first half was surprisingly close in that one. So it's an interesting one. Obviously, I think that Dwenger's got a little bit more than Northside overall. But I think this could be one that Northside could hang around with and make this a fun game for a half or three quarters. And if you can make it a fun game for three quarters and a close game for three quarters, it does kind of throw some things out the window going into a fourth quarter.
Dan, before we move into 4A, I wanted to ask you real quick about Deuce Taylor. The All-SAC team came out yesterday, and Deuce Taylor was honorable mention for Northside. Now, I had to sit out 4 games, 3 due to transfer rules, 1 with an injury. So only started 5 games for North, but do you feel like he was undervalued, or do you feel because of the games he missed, honorable mention is a good spot for him?
I think that's fair, especially when you look at some of the guys that were in front of him. Obviously, Luke Goody, first team, and John Barnes Jr., second team as quarterbacks. I think they're clearly, to me, the 2 best quarterbacks in this conference. But Deuce was very impressive, and getting to see him, even in Week 9, even when Northside had their struggles, the way he's able to move around, the reads he's able to make, he's a very talented quarterback. I think that I would have been more disappointed if they left him off the team because he missed so many games, missing almost half the season. But I think he's right where he I would expect him to fit in based on the time that he was able to play.
Dan, looking at sectional 20 in Class 4A, Huntington North and Mississinewa. Mississinewa looked impressive last week, holding Delta to 7 points. But let's talk Marion and New Haven. Marion took care of business against Wayne. They go to New Haven this Friday, and I just got a funny feeling that New Haven matches up really well against Marion in terms of the skill position players. If they can get a push up front on both sides of the football, this could be a game that New Haven could take at home against an 8-2 Giants team.
Yeah, I think that people are kind of underrating New Haven, and we talked about that before. Part of that is because of their record, because they played such a strong group in the beginning of the season, so their record is a little bit deceiving based on the talent they have. If you can get another breakout week from Jakar Williams like they got last week, their quarterback, just coming off a fantastic week, threw for 220 yards last week, ran for 110 yards. If he can be as mobile, I think that makes New Haven very dangerous because we know they have other weapons on the ground. We know they have other weapons in the air, like Jamar Hutchins. So if he's able to do that again, then I think New Haven could be a team that could pull off an upset here. And I think Marion, hopefully for them, for their sake, is not looking past New Haven.
The other 4A sectional in the area, sectional 19, and on paper it looks like a couple really good matchups, East Noble, DeKalb, Northwood, and Leo. Is there any possibility that we have a final not East Noble Leo in this one?
I think there's a possibility for that. We're going to lean the way of East Noble on their end of the thing. Obviously, DeKalb plays a very good season, but when they played them the first time around, they didn't leave a lot of confidence that they were going to be able to beat them a second time around. So I think East Noble is definitely a favorite. Northwood's an interesting one. At 7-3, they've had a good season and are able to play with some teams pretty well. So I think they have a chance that they could really give Leo an issue when you look at their losses. Not bad losses. Lost to Concord by 10, a 5A school, a loss to Warsaw, a 6A school. And they have some good wins along the way. So I wouldn't throw Northwood right out the window yet, but I think Leo is just getting better every week. And I think that last week opened them up a little bit to realizing that other teams are getting better too. You know, they play Angola last week. It's a close game after blowing them out in week 2. So I think that was a good wake-up call for Leo to realize, hey, we may be better, but all these teams are getting better around us.
He is Dan Vance of OutsideTheHuddle.net joining us here on the ESPN Coaches Show presented by Crumbach Chevrolet. Moving along, going to Class 3A. And in Sectional 26, you look at Mishawaka, Marion, and West Noble. We've heard a lot about West Noble. Very impressive. Undefeated, 10-0, yet they haven't played the quality of opponent that Mishawaka Marion's playing. They play South Bend teams. They went to Jimtown. They played and beat Culver. Their one losses to Mishawaka, a very good team with Keith Kinder as head coach. I mean, is this an even game? Because a lot of people say West Noble 10-0, they can make a run, but I think that this is the biggest challenge so far for West Noble. And to be honest, it's really not even close in terms of the caliber of opponents they've played.
Yeah, I think that Mishawaka Marion presents a very tough challenge. And when you look at that, you look at the fact that this nice team has 4 guys over 200 yards rushing this year, so they have a lot of weapons on the ground. A lot of guys they can go to. Malcolm Anderson leading the way for them is a really strong running back. I think they just have a lot of weapons. You got all those guys that can run. Their quarterback has thrown for 1,100 yards this year, so I think they have a lot of unique weapons, like you said, that West Noble hasn't had to deal with, and we talked about that before. We know they were NECC good and NECC great this year, but are they great outside the area? And this is a big test for them. If they can get a win against Mishawaka Marion, then I think it's clear that we anoint West Noble as a big deal. It's just a question. We don't know until we get the answer, and we're going to get an answer on Friday night one way or another.
The other sectional in Class 3A, this is one of the semifinals, is Norwell at Concordia. I've seen Norwell play recently. I saw them go to DeKalb and play tough. They handled their business against Huntington North, lost to Columbia City. I guess the question is, can Norwell get enough defensive stops with that D to knock off Concordia at Zollner in one of these semifinals in Sectional 27?
That's going to be a tough challenge for them because Concordia has been able to show that they've got weapons, and last week they were very successful airing the ball out. Some great connections between Brandon Davis and Jaron Kindig. Obviously, you have Tyler Grossman. Jalen Vanderbosch had a fantastic week last week on both sides of the football. and there's those great weapons. And for them, I think a lot of it, and we have to talk at this time of the year with the weather the way it is outside right now, what is Zollner going to be like on Friday night? And Norwell, not that they don't play on natural grass, but not many teams get to play on natural mud. And that's what you're probably going to get at Zollner. And Concordia's more used to that field. It's a rough field. It's a patchy field. And this is a game where home field advantage could really play a role.
Dan, Class 2A, Sectional 35, Lures at 3-7 at Eastside 8-2. You saw Eastside play last week when they shut out Woodland 21-0. So despite the Blazers having 8 wins, a lot of people already writing in Bishop Lures to get to the final of the sectional, move on to the regional. But what should we expect with the Eastside Blazers and the Bishop Lures Knights on Friday?
I think it's going to be a very good game, and there's a reason why I've picked this as my favorite sectional, because I think it's so even across the board, despite the fact you look at the records, and Eastside at 8-2 is the only team with a above 500 record left in this field. I think we're going to see a really athletic battle. Eastside impressed me on Friday night, and Laban Davis throws a very good football. The one thing the Blazers have to do is they have to attack early, and we've seen that throughout the year, the struggle to jump up early, and then they kind of have to take control in the second half of games, and we saw it last Friday night, 0-0 at halftime, and then it looked like a completely different game in the second half. Some of that was Woodland's woes, but a lot of that was what Eastside was able to do well and move the ball on the ground and move the ball through the air and take those little chunks, 12, 15-yard chunks out of Woodland and keep the opposing defense on the field. And once they were able to do that last Friday, they were able to slow things down. They were able to tire Woodland out. And it's a similar approach they're going to take. I think it's a very fun game to watch.
Dan, real quick, in Class 1A, you have South Adams playing in a semifinal in Sectional 43 at home against Monroe Central, a team that the Starfires already beat by 19 in the regular season. And then you have Adams Central at 9-1 in Sectional 44 hosting North Miami. Any possibility that either of those teams gets clipped, or do we expect them to be playing for sectional titles next week?
I expect them both to be playing for sectional titles. I think Monroe Central could present some interesting obstacles for South Adams, but I think that they're on the right pace right now. That I don't think that the chance of them getting clipped is pretty slim.
Dan, real quick before we let you go, what's new at OutsideTheHuddle.net?
Obviously, we have our breakdowns for Class 6A and 5A and sectionals. Just released the all NECC and all SAC teams the last couple of days, so we have lists of those. And then we're really just kind of churning into basketball season. We're in the middle of our countdown of our top 10 girls teams, and then the start of the season next week, and in the midst of our top 50s for boys. So all that stuff going on, and heavy into our basketball previews, but then obviously heavy into previewing sectionals with our picks and our game of the week and everything that you see on the normal days, on Thursdays and Fridays on the website.
All right, boss. Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you next week.
I appreciate it.
That was Dan Vance of OutsideTheHuddle.net joining us on the Halloween edition of the ESPN Coaches Show presented by Crumbach Chevrolet. We are going to take a break. When we come back, Coach Pete Kempf of the DeKalb Barons will join us. You are listening to the ESPN Coaches Show presented by Crumbach Chevrolet on ESPN Radio 1380 and 100.9 FM. Welcome back to a holiday edition of the ESPN Coaches Show presented by Crumbach Chevrolet. Happy Halloween to everybody. Probably driving around, taking their kids door to door, since it's windy and nasty and rainy and cold, and hopefully no snowflakes out there. But I'm Justin Kenny here with Caleb Hatch in the studio with me. DC Hendricks out. Caleb Hatch in temporarily, unless he does a lot better job in DC. Then we may just, consider keep him on long term. But thanks to Dan Vance before the break for joining us, breaking down the complete sectional schedule coming up on Friday night. One of those games, you could say, premier games in the area coming up in sectional semifinal week is a rematch with DeKalb at 8-2, going to undefeated East Noble at 10-0. It'll be a kickoff at 7 o'clock on Friday in Kendallville. And the head coach of the DeKalb Barons is Pete Kempf. He joins us on the line right now. How you doing, Coach?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, especially when you actually pick the phone up.
I know. The first day, I'm going to blame that on the school because we don't get reception in here. So I'm standing by a window, freezing my buns off here. But you know what? For you, I'm willing to do it.
Oh, shucks. I appreciate it, sir. But hey, we're talking football with DeKalb Barons entering November, so it's a good thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a long time.
Let's look back first before we look forward, because I think the home matchup with Columbia City last week was one of those intriguing matchups, considering how close the first game was between you two. It was 14-14 at one point. Then you guys end up winning 29-14. Take us through that one.
Columbia City but our last two games obviously have come down to a game of inches. The rivalry between Columbia City and DeKalb goes back a long time, even back to when it was Auburn High School. And I think in the 10 times they've played in the last since like 1985 or 4, Columbia City and DeKalb have played each other in sectionals. I think 4 times DeKalb was ranked and Columbia City knocked them out, and I think vice versa. We always talk about geographic rivals and like Garrett and Eastside and that stuff, but really, like a lot of times, like when we honor the '94 team, they come back. It's not, hey, did you beat Garrett? Did you beat Angola? It's, did you beat Columbia City? The hatred between the schools goes back a long way. When I was coming up, or when Hummer was there, or Cook and Fricky were locked in those tight battles for years. And it's always a close game, no matter where it is, between DeKalb and Columbia City, and it's a time honored and respectable rivalry in the conference, and it's always going to be tough. And I thought we played a great 4 quarters. It's probably the best 4 quarters we played all year. And kudos to Columbia City. They played a great game, and we were fortunate enough to come away with this one with a win.
Coach, when you
make it too interesting.
Oh, no, you're good. So, let's look back, because the last 2 quote-unquote kind of big games you had at home, East Noble comes in, and they win by 28. I don't want to overshadow Norwell, because you guys were down 9-0 at halftime in that game. We were able to come back at home and get a win. But then you had Leo come in Week 9, and so exciting in DeKalb, because, when's the last time a game in Week 9 meant so much? And Leo comes in and takes care of business. So to come back 1 week later against a conference foe that you've seen already, that's fired up, it's a rival, and winner goes home. For you guys to shake that Leo loss off and come back and play as good as you did, I think it was a testament to you, sir. Why not?
Yeah, I think it's a testament more to a lot of the kids, because they've come back a lot of times this year in tight. And a lot of people don't realize the Leo game was a 7-point game going into the 4th quarter. We come out in the 3rd quarter and we take the entire 3rd quarter on an offensive drive. They didn't touch the ball in the 3rd quarter. They come back and they score, and that forces, or it's 7 minutes to go, down 14, and we're forced to do some things that we're not, normally great at, throwing the ball in 2-minute tempo, and that's not who we are as an identity of the program. And then Peyton Wall obviously does what Peyton Wall did. He's, one great ball player, and that score got a little lopsided. He took that onside kick back, and he's just, he's excellent, and I'm excited to see what they can do as, against a great Northwood team, because I don't think that's a given for Northwood. I think Leo's a great ball club. And then, really coming back to, Columbia City, it's, you never want to play a team twice, in any given year, because it's even harder to beat them the second time. And, Columbia City, we came in, and I think we played a really good game. The kids played hard. We didn't make as many self-inflicted mistakes as we've done in the past, especially the first game. I think we left 14 points to the board in the first. And, obviously we had some low snaps, but, nothing that we couldn't handle or manage. And the kids played great. We pounded the ball the way we needed to pound the ball. And, Evan, I think, was like 80% on the night. Hit his open routes. He had some great 4th downs. And we had to take care of business, and we did what we had to do.
Coach Pete Kempf, DeKalb Barons, joining us here on the High School Coaches Show, presented by Crumbach Chevrolet. Coach, wanted to talk about a couple of your guys before we look ahead to Friday. And the 1-2 punch of Landon Miller and Tanner Jack at running back has been effective all season long. They've combined for over 1,600 yards rushing and 19 touchdowns. And I guess there's nothing better than having one really good running back, other than maybe having 2 really good running backs, and you definitely have it in Landon and Tanner.
Oh, absolutely. I think we have 2 of the best running backs in the conference, and if not the best 1-2 punch in Northeast Indiana. They run, Landon runs so hard, and they just, he gets up downfield. I think he's averaging right under 8 or over 8 yards a carry this year behind our own line. Tanner's about 6.5. They're different backs, and they complement each other so well. And, when one's banged up, the other one can step in, and vice versa. And what a lot of people don't realize, too, is we do have a 3rd back in the offense, and that's Curtis Martin. He's our H-back, fullback type. He catches, 1 or 2 balls a game, gets 1 or 2 carries a game. But he pounds the rock, and he keeps, he's a different style of running back, and he gets a couple carries every game. I think he had 3 carries against Columbia City for like almost 20 yards. And we have those guys in our program that are willing just to put their head down and play that old school DeKalb football that made us so great for so long. And, building that identity around guys like that and a solid O-line is what we want to do and what we've been able to do. And it's just been a pleasure to watch them play.
Coach, everyone knows, without an effective running game or effective passing game, or at least a passing game that can be a threat, teams can just stack the box against Landon and Tanner. And while Evan Eschbach hasn't put up electrifying numbers, he's been good enough to keep defenses honest. And I think Easton Rhodes is an underrated receiver for you. He's not putting up gaudy numbers, but he's making some big plays at big times. You mentioned Curtis Martin, and Tanner Huff has also come up with a couple big plays. Evan Snyder in the passing game has caught some big balls. Yeah. So putting those guys in the equation in that offense really opens things up for those running backs.
You can't bat an eye at 1,200 yards throwing in any given year.
Yeah, right.
It's still fourth in the conference, and I think when you average almost 280 yards a game in the ground and 120 passing, close to 130 passing. It kind of overshadows what we've done through the air. Before we had, guys like Wilp and Goebel and Brunson and Boyce, putting up these 100 to 200 yard games. And that's because we couldn't run the ball as effectively as we do now. And last year we didn't throw the ball effectively enough to be a contender in the conference. And this year that's been a big difference. We convert a lot of and longs this year. We are very effective in our passing game, and that's where we want to be. We haven't quite hit as many shots as we want. We haven't really called them as much, but we don't necessarily have to unless we, need to. And we can be in a 2-minute and a no huddle. We have that ability if we need to. And even though it's not our bread and butter, we have a lot of different opportunities and weapons within our program. We got, I think we have 8 receivers that have caught balls this year, or running backs that caught balls this year between those 1,200 yards. And, we don't have any one guy that's going to come out and be like, we got to stop him, because we have so many guys you have to focus on. Receivers are open because of the type of play action and, the different formations and, the different routes, concepts that we're able to do. And Evan gives us a great opportunity. And I think a lot of people underestimate Evan's running ability too. I think versus Columbia City, he had 8 carries for like 80 yards. That's never been really a big part of his game up until this year, and he's gotten really good at it. And, and he's able to read and do some things that, aren't necessarily his forte, but he's more than effective in doing it, and that's what we asked him to do. And I think he's way up there. I think he's just with Landon in all-purpose yards. So, for us, we have a lot of offensive weapons, and that carries over the defense as well, and we're thankful to have all those guys.
Coach, Friday night you go to Kendallville, a team that came to your place in East Noble in Week 4, knocked you off 35-7. What can you take from that game to then take into a Week 11 showdown here in the sectional semifinal?
I don't think anybody's picking us to win. We're 28, 35-point dogs. I think East was obviously one. Their football team, they're well coached across the board. It's hard to win in Kendallville. When it comes down to is what our guys are willing to do. It's going to be a bar fight. We have nothing to lose, man. We have absolutely nothing to lose. And I do think a team that's got nothing to lose can be dangerous. Like I said, no one gives us a shot. But we're going to continue to work our butts off. We're going to continue to do what we can do. And you just never know what could happen on a Friday night.
That's right. That's right, Coach. Win or lose on Friday, sensational year thus far. You got 8 dubs for the first time since 2002, so it's been a great year in DeKalb, and we'll see if you guys can keep it going on Friday. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for all the coverage this year, and it allowed me to be on tonight. It's been a true pleasure to bring DeKalb, to be a part of having DeKalb back in the spotlight once again after so many years, and so thankful for the community that supports us and the young men that have worked their butts off. Just to kind of get back to this point. We're excited for many years to come.
Absolutely. Thanks, buddy. We'll catch up to you later.
Thank you very much.
That's Coach Pete Kempf of the DeKalb Barons joining us as the 8-2 DeKalb Barons head to East Noble to take on the Knights at 10-0 on Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoff in the sectional semifinal of Sectional 19. Again, the first matchup between those two teams was a 35-7 win for East Noble at DeKalb. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Coach Doug Dinan, Carroll Chargers, will join us. You are listening to the ESPN Coaches Show presented by Crumback Chevrolet on ESPN Radio 1380 and 100.9 FM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Week 11 sectional semifinal edition of the ESPN High School Coaches Show, presented by Crumback Chevrolet. I'm Justin Kenny here with Caleb Hatch on a beautiful, wonderful Halloween night. Hopefully you guys are all being safe out there. Anybody listening in the car, taking the kids door to door. I always remember cold Halloweens. I never remember warm Halloweens. I knew there were some, but I just, for some reason, the cold, dreary, rainy, windy Halloweens always stuck with me when I was a kid. So it sucks out there. I understand, but these are the ones you're going to remember, especially taking your kids out to. So enjoy it. While you're out there, we're here till 7 o'clock talking area high school football. Thanks to Coach Pete Kempf, DeKalb Barons joining us before the break. We're going to move right along in the ESPN Game of the Week coming up right here on ESPN 1380, 100.9 FM on Friday night. Will be from Spolar Stadium with the Carroll Chargers and Snyder Panthers, a rematch of a Week 2 game that was a 21-20 victory for the Snyder Panthers. The head coach of the Carroll Chargers is Doug Dinan. He joins us on the line right now. Coach, how are you?
I'm good, Justin. I'm a little concerned about your childhood memories, though.
That's just the tip of the...
revive some positive memories that you had when you were Halloweening and trick-or-treating when you were a kid. So.
I should probably go lay on a couch somewhere, let's be honest, right? to deal with some things.
All right. Good to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. I assume you just gave the kids the bye week off. I mean, I'm sure you guys didn't do a darn thing last week, right?
Yeah. You know what? You know, the bye week is sometimes it's difficult, you know, your mindset that you're going to handle because, you know, it's time off. I mean, we don't generally have time off. And so we pretty much handled it as routine and as normal as we could. You know, we went Monday through Thursday last week, and our schedule and our routine throughout the week was the same. And then we had Friday off as if it was a game night. And some of us went and watched some games and then start back up this week as if it was a normal week. So, you know, it's kind of tough because you like to be in the routine. You like to be in that groove. You like to be in that daily grind, and when you have a Friday off, you hope that you don't get out of that routine and that same sense of urgency, you know, and hope that complacency doesn't slip in.
I know some teams were valuing that bye week to get healthy in this, you know, being in 5A, being in 6A, getting that week to rest up. Did you have some guys that were nicked up that was a much needed break, or have you guys been pretty healthy right now?
About week 8, we probably had as many injuries as what we had all season long, and we had to hold a couple of guys out, you know, that week. But you know, that was the Concordia week, and then pretty much after that, everybody came back, and so we are at full strength right now, and we're completely healthy at this point.
Coach, let's look back. It may feel kind of ancient history, but Week 9 game, you beat Wayne, and some people were surprised at the final score, but 2 straight victories to end the year, at least the regular season, 6-3. Had to feel pretty good with how your guys bounced back from that Week 7 defeat against the rival Homestead.
Yeah, without question. It's always great to have a W, and we're very pleased with the leadership that our senior class has shown and the quality of work that the kids have put together and through 9 weeks. And, you know, the win against Wayne was a tough win. Wayne's a good football team, and many people don't realize that since they were, you know, struggling to get a win throughout the conference. But it shows how tough the conference is. And, you know, and we're very pleased. You know, 6-3 is nothing to, you know, squibble about. I mean, we're very pleased, you know, coming back, you know, from the previous season. But it all boils down to hard work, the investment in the lives of each other, and, you know, the belief in measuring the quality of your work and having competitive excellence every day.
Coach, somebody that was very impressive the first time around when you played Snyder, and his first real big test, I felt, was Jeffrey Becker at quarterback. He's thrown for over 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns on the season, sophomore quarterback. How would you grade his growth, his development, his performance over the course of the regular season?
I think without question he has, you know, come to understand defenses, you know, better, come to understand, obviously, the offense and where to distribute the ball and who to get the ball to, and reading different things within the offense. You know, but probably more than anything is his comfort level in the pocket. You know, he's understanding that, you know, I don't have to bail, I don't have to get out, I don't have to run every time that I feel a little bit of pressure. And that maturing process, continues, and it'll continue into next year and into his senior year. And, as we go through, and the more teams that he faces and defenses that he sees, and the more experience that he's he's going to be a very good one.
Coach, switching to the defensive side of the ball, and I don't think we talk a lot about your defense, but it's made tremendous strides from last season to this season and even throughout this year as well. Guys like Matt Ottenweller and Larry Seibel up front has been tremendous. I think the junior Craig McGinnis, too, has been great at times for you as well. So how would you grade your defense and some of those guys that have really stepped up for you?
The defense has been outstanding all year long. They really have. They play fast. They play physical. They play as a unit. They celebrate together, and it begins up front. It begins with the defensive line. It begins with, guys like Wes Stevens and Larry Seibel, and Murray and all those guys that are playing on the defensive line. And the linebackers, as you talked about, you got the Ottenweller brothers and Craig playing at linebacker. They do a tremendous job. We like to blitz. They do a nice job covering the under routes, tackling as well. And in the back five, the secondary is creating turnovers, and they play fast, and they play, as one unit. We're very pleased. They've done a tremendous job of keeping teams out of the end zone, and minimizing the number of yards that the opponent gets. So, that's where it's about. I mean, if we can be, good defensively, then we've got a chance to win games.
Coach, I know we've talked about it in the past. A lot of teams, they hit the field when they're playing Snyder, and they look across the field, and they're automatically intimidated, right? They're already 2 touchdowns down almost mentally because of the playing Snyder. You guys beat them last year soundly in the regular season. You guys hung with them week 2, and a lot of people said, man, they were the better team, played better that night. So confidence is there. You guys can play Snyder. You guys can beat Snyder. So I think confidence-wise, you have to feel, I imagine, pretty good heading into Friday night that, hey, we're not intimidated at all by playing the Snyder Panthers.
No, I think that our kids do have a great deal of confidence, and confidence is something that's internal. It has very little to do about your opponent. It has to do with belief, with your opponent, with your teammates, belief that you can do the job. And all of those are intrinsic. All of those are attributes that are internal. And that's where it begins. The deal with playing Snyder is you've got to be fundamentally sound. You've got to be physical, because on the other side of the ball, they're going to be exactly that. They're going to be good on offense. They're going to be good on defense. They're going to be good on special teams. And so it's not that you have to be perfect. It's you have to minimize your mistakes that are big plays within the games. Every game boils down to about 4 or 5 big plays, and you've got to win those 4 or 5 big plays. And the catches, you never know when that happens. And so you've got to be at your best every time, every snap, every down. And that's where our kids believe that they can play.
Coach, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about a certain player, and this was the one I thought serious omission on all SAC first team that came out yesterday, and we won't throw any coaches under the bus or anything because I know it's a coach's vote, but Leighton Mitchell not making first team. He has 630 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. In your mind, is he an all SAC first teamer at wide receiver?
Absolutely, without a question. And I'm not going to mince words or hide behind that at all, and not take the high road and not make that stance, because he leads the team in leads the team in catches and leads the team in receptions and yards, And there's a kid that is very deserving, but here's what he realizes, here's what we realize, that those individual accolades are insignificant. What matters is the team's success, and that's what we're looking forward to.
And you guys will look forward to getting some team success on Friday, 7 o'clock kickoff at Spuller Stadium, Snyder and Carroll. Coach, always a pleasure. Thanks a lot. Good luck on Friday.
Thanks very much.
That was Coach Doug Dinan, Carroll Chargers, joining us, talking some 6A football as the Chargers look to knock off Snyder for the first time in the playoffs in school history. They're 0-4 against the Panthers all time in the postseason. But, of course, the Carroll Chargers beat Snyder soundly in the regular season last year. They lost to him by just a single point this year. And I think while you don't want to lose that Week 2 game to Snyder in the manner that it happened, with a blocked extra point really preventing the Carroll Chargers from tying the game in the fourth quarter, you can take the lesson out of that game and saying, look, every single play matters against the Snyder Panthers. It doesn't matter if it's in the first quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, if it's an extra point try, if it's a 4th and 1, if it's a 1st and 10 at your own 18. Every play matters. You need to execute every single play in all three facets to beat Snyder. I'm not saying Carroll was complacent last year in the postseason when they played Snyder, but what I am going to say is when you beat them with, I want to say, relative ease like you did in the regular season, it was a convincing win for Snyder last year for Carroll when they beat Snyder 38-14 in week 2. I think when you come around and play them in the postseason again, a lot of the energy and the thought process that came out of 38-14 in week 2 and how you dominated Snyder makes you then naturally come back the second time around and feel like we're going to do it again. And instead, Snyder drops 49 on you and you lose 49-30. So I think the greater lesson of the regular season comes this year when you lose by 1 in heartbreaking fashion to Snyder at Spuller Stadium. I think there'll be a little bit more determination for Carroll after happened in week 2 as opposed to maybe last year because of the dominant win they had last year at Carroll when they beat Snyder 38-14. We're going to take a break, come back, we'll wrap it up with Coach Josh Gerber, Norwell Knights. You are listening to the ESPN High School Coaches Show presented by Crumbach Chevrolet on ESPN Radio 1380 and 100.9 FM. Welcome back for the final time here on a Halloween edition of the ESPN High School Coaches Show presented by Crumbach Chevrolet. I'm Justin Kenny here with Caleb Hatch producing. No DC Hendricks this evening, but Caleb Hatch doing a bang-up job here as we are talking area high school football till the top of the hour. If you're out trick-or-treating this evening, be careful. If you're driving the kids around here in this miserable weather, be careful. A lot of great memories from Halloween's very much like this. It really felt like fall. So when it turned quickly around here. So hopefully you're bundled up tonight doing some trick-or-treating. But thanks to Coach Doug Dinan before the break talking some 6A football. We're going to transition a little bit, talk some Norwell Knights football. They got a game coming up at Concordia in a sectional semifinal matchup coming up on Friday from Zellner Stadium. Head coach of the Norwell Knights is Josh Gerber. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Not bad, Coach, and congratulations on the win last week. You got a convincing victory against conference foe Belmont, 49-0. Now you move on, but take us back last week in terms of this team getting a victory, particularly after going to Columbia City, losing that game in week 9. Had to feel obviously really good to knock off Belmont in the fashion that you did.
Yeah, it did, and we've been kind of preaching to the kids all year that we're really close to being a good team, and we needed to practice well and clean up some of the stuff, mistakes and penalties and turnovers that have cost us in quite a few ball games this year. And kids, I think, really took it to heart, and we had a great week of preparation, and it showed last Friday night.
I have to feel, Coach, that man, if you could put together 4 complete quarters in some of these games, you mentioned just being on the cusp of a really good team. You almost beat Leo, obviously, in that epic 3-2 game. Mm-hmm. You were up 9-0 at halftime at DeKalb on a game that I was at. That you guys looked really good all game long, but particularly that first half. So, Columbia City, another example, losing 17-14. So you're kind of on the cusp, right? You're just if you could put together a full 4 quarters, you could be there, and I'm sure that's going to be a key this week.
Yeah, we emphasized the guys. We were 8 points away from being a 7-2 football team, and you go back and you look at the Leo game, the DeKalb game, and the Columbia City game. You can find turnovers and penalties and things that just really cost us, and a lot of it was self-inflicted. And not that those aren't good teams, and not that they we're not trying to take anything away from them, but if we could control the controllables a little bit better, maybe we have a whole lot better record, and Since we're kind of eliminated from the conference race, our focus has been on the second season and preparing for sectional play, and we got off to a good start with that. So hopefully we can continue now and keep playing these we call them 1 week seasons, and hopefully we can earn the right to play another one next week.
Coach, your defense has been pretty darn good all season long, allowed just 10 points combined in the first 4 weeks of the year. Then you played New Haven and East Noble back-to-back, and then you've held the last 4 opponents underneath their season averages in points. Break down this defense for us for probably one of the better units in the area that doesn't get a lot of pub.
Yeah, we're an attacking, aggressive 3-4 style. Coach Matt Taylor brought that to us. he spent some time at Columbia City, Huntington North, and at Homestead, and he brought that to us. Real appreciative for it. We've got some good guys up front. We're really happy with our front seven and with our secondary. Our secondary is young and inexperienced, but they've really grown this year. Eli Riley's kind of the captain back there and gets guys where they need to be. And Joel Rinkenberger is kind of the heart and soul of the defense as an inside linebacker for us. And he was out sick yesterday. We missed him at practice, and you could tell a big difference when he wasn't there. There's just a leadership void, but that's having him back tonight was great. And we've got some good young defensive linemen, and we brought back Cale Gray, a second-team all-conference performer last year. So they're kind of maybe unknown in the area, but great group of kids, hardworking and very aggressive and fun to watch.
Coach, you mentioned Cale Gray, a senior, but a lot of those other guys you mentioned, juniors. Eli Riley, a junior. Rinkenberger, a junior. A lot of juniors and sophomores on this varsity roster that have been filling big roles for you. So obviously the focus is on Friday night in Concordia, but you have to feel, man, a lot of these guys that you needed to step up this year have done so, and they come back next year.
Yeah, they have. They do. I mean, just wait till next year. We want this year to be our year.
Right, yeah.
And we're working hard. Kind of like, why not us? Why not now? Why don't we take that next step? Why don't we break through? And this Friday we've had opportunities this year to take that next step and to break through and to become a next level team, and we haven't done it yet. We've knocked on the door and been really close, but one of these times we need to open that door or just break through it. And that's kind of been our emphasis. We've got another opportunity to do just that this week with the trip up to Concordia.
Yeah, Coach, I mean, I remember, 2014, this team had 3 wins and won a sectional. The year before, they had 4 wins and won a sectional. So, I mean, the precedent is there. I mean, just because you enter the postseason with an under 500 record doesn't mean any team can not win a sectional, particularly you guys, because the history's there recently. Yeah,
and we feel like, and we're in a really good football league. All the teams we play are well coached, and they're all really pretty good. You look at East Noel going 9-0, Leo 8-1, DeKalb 7-2, Columbia City was 5-4, and you can go on and on down the list. And we play good people week in and week out. And unfortunately for us, we're one of the smaller teams in the league between us and Belmont, and we feel like the conference play does a great job of preparing us for the tournament. And there's a difference between 3A and 4A football. I'm not saying that 3A football is not just good, but there's just a difference. And we feel like we're prepared to play well at the 3A level, and we'll see what we can do this week.
Coach, you go to Zollner Stadium coming up on Friday, 7 o'clock kickoff against the Cadets. What's the key to go to Fort Wayne and get a win?
You know what? We've got to, kind of like what we talked about in the games that we lost, we've got to control the controllables. We've got to eliminate silly penalties. We've got to take care of the football. We can't turn it over. Defensively, we can't give up big plays. We've got to make them drive the field and earn it. And they're an explosive big play offense. We can't let them do that to us. And we've got to finish drives in the end zone. We told the kids one drive, one score per quarter, and then get us to 28, and we can win a lot of games at 28 points, especially the way our defense plays. So, we've got our goals set, and then we know how we want to attack them. We just need to go out and do that now on Friday.
Coach, I appreciate the time. Thanks a lot. Good luck on Friday trying to get win number 6.
Hey, thank you much.
That's Coach Josh Gerber, Norwell Knights, joining us here as his team 5-5 after a 49-0 victory over Belmont to kick off the postseason last Friday. And that's going to do it for us. Thank you to Coach Gerber for joining us, Doug Dinan of the Carroll Chargers, Pete Kempf, DeKalb Barons, and, of course, we kicked it off as we do each and every week with Dan Vance of OutsideTheHuddle.net. We'll be back next Thursday, 6 o'clock. We'll break down some sectional championship matchups. For Caleb Hatch, I'm Justin Kenny. You've been listening to the ESPN High School Coaches Show, presented by Crumback Chevrolet on ESPN Radio 1380 and 100.9 FM.
Podcasts by Federated Media. Podcasts by Federated Media.